Welcome, everyone, as we celebrate and honor Black History Month. I'm your host and moderator, Dr. Camille LaFleur, chair of the AAMFT Topical Interest Network Margins to Center. We are pleased that you have taken time out of your schedule to participate in Lost in the Shadows, presented by Robert M. Cunningham, Jr. Now, there will be time at the end of this presentation for Q&A, so please add your questions regarding the session to the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. Before I introduce the speaker, I would like to encourage you to be the speaker you want to see by joining the AAMFT speaker portal to become a speaker at not only AAMFT events such as this one, but for events occurring within the broader mental health community as a way to share systemic family therapy with the world. The speaker portal profile system allows you to customize the types of events where you would like to speak and gives you the opportunity to let your light shine in a brief recorded video segment. AAMFT is currently searching for speakers for the Systemic Family Therapy Conference that will be held virtually, as well as other various new webinar series that will be coming to you soon. For more information on the speaker portal, please contact events@aamft.org. It is now my pleasure to introduce Robert M. Cunningham, Jr. Robert is the founder of RM Cunningham Consulting, LLC, a mental health private practice in Salina, Kansas. He is also the founder of Raise the Climate, a local civic learning initiative that was inspired by the study of Black history. The purpose of the initiative is to bring the community together through interactive, fun, and engaging activities for the primary purpose of ensuring that Black history is passed down from generation to generation to encourage self-love and dignity and to diffuse false narratives that threaten African Americans' relationships with others. He's the director of special programs at the City Teen Center, where he has served in leadership since 2009. He is also the interim pastor of Lloyd Memorial Church of God in Christ, soon to be renamed Lift Church, whose mission is to uplift the body of Christ to boldly pursue God, full heart, full soul, full mind. Robert is a professional member of the AAMFT organization. He served as a board member for the AAMFT Board of Directors from 2020 to 2022. Within that capacity, he also served 2 terms on the election committee. Everyone, please welcome Robert.
Thank you, Dr. LaFleur. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. I met Dr. LaFleur at the 2019 AAMFT annual conference in Austin, Texas. I did not know that we would be working together in this capacity, but know that I'm overjoyed that we are here. We've had some really good laughs and was even laughing before we came on today. I would also like to thank AAMFT staff, Helen Tekla, education and speaker specialist, for coordinating this webinar, and also to Jessica Turner, who is behind the scenes today, standing in her stead. Lastly, but definitely not least, I would like to thank all of you who have taken time out of your day to view this webinar. I do not take this for granted, and the fact that you chose to be here, know that I'm honored by your presence. Lost in the shadows. I stand staring at the shadow of relativism, dark, dismal, deceptive, shaped after the silhouette of self. I feel the sun of absolutism all around me, feeling its radiance on my back, but I'm unwilling to look directly into it because the light of its truth forces me to close my eyes, making me blind to what lies in front of me, the restless one. Where did this idea of lost in the shadows first originate, and how does this relate to Black history? I base my life on the inerrancy and efficacy of the Bible. For it, the Bible teaches me, it corrects me, it challenges me, it trains me in how to love God, become more like Christ, to love people, and also to identify myself and others from this lens. The brief poem that you just heard was written by me. Let me introduce myself. I'm Robert, but I'm also the restless one. and this is its interpretation. I stand staring at the shadow of relativism, dark, dismal, deceptive, shaped after the silhouette of self. I feel the sun of absolutism all around me, feeling its radiance on my back, but I'm unwilling to look directly into it because the light of its truth forces me to close my eyes, making me blind to what lies in front of me. Relativism, the doctrine that knowledge, truth, and morality exist in relation to culture, society, or historical context, and are not absolute. Relativism is described in this poem as a shadow that is shaped after the silhouette of self. Absolutism is the acceptance of or belief in absolute principles in political, philosophical, ethical, or theological matters. Absolutism is described as the sun because of the sun's immensity and its power to illuminate, naturally brightening with light all that it touches and spiritually illuminating the intellect, and it symbolically represents God. Within this poem, refusal to look into the sun or accepting truth as absolute is a refusal to shift one's knowledge from self, because then it would mean the rejection of of that which we have so intimately defined ourselves to be. This defining of ourselves is where we begin to get lost in the shadows. If you knew my social location as Dr. LaFleur now does, you would know that I am son, I am brother, I was the low self-esteem student that needed summer school, I was molested, I am loud, I am sometimes impulsive, highly passionate, the boy DDT'd in the hood, I am husband, I am father, I am peepaw, I am friend, I am poet, I am protector, I am Black, I am a man, and I am proud. These are all reflections and or shadow groups that I exist within. If I were to ask you who you are, there would be likely endless replies, I should say. We would have similarities. We would definitely have some differences. Some things I would love about you. I promise I would. We may laugh or cry about the things that you share, and also some things I could easily disdain about you. It is from this foundation that we, understanding that there is a plethora of shadow groups that we can exist within. When shadow groups intersect with one another, they could complement or bring crisis to those individuals or groups encompassed. Let me explain. In 1992, I'm a senior in high school, excited about attending a vocational school, learning how to become a medical assistant. I had to ride a school bus there in the morning without transferring to another bus. However, on the ride back from the vocational school, I did have to get on another bus that transported me back to my high school. It is on the bus from the vocational school to the transfer bus where I would like you to experience with me the collision and crisis of different shadow groups intersecting. Now you're gonna have to be a little flexible in this webinar. So for this experience, if you're willing, only if you're willing, I'm gonna ask that you close your eyes wherever you are. Don't worry, I can't see you. Take a deep breath with me if you could. And release. If you could be mindful and reflect on a time in your life where you chose to engage in learning a new idea or process. You don't fully understand what you're going to learn, but you're open to the new ideas, and the teacher or instructor that is presenting to you. You're open to it. You admire the teacher's energy and excitement as she or he guides you. You feel nervously excited. You're eager and happy to be meeting new people who have the same desire as you to learn. Now, imagine having this feeling as a high school student, along with the understanding that you are just trying to figure life out as it goes. The school day ends and you're laughing and you're smiling with the new people that you met in class, and you get on the bus to depart. All day you've had to adjust to the awkwardness of maneuvering through and around unknown people at break times and in the hallways. This, the bus ride, is the final adjustment phase of the day. You enter the bus, you sit down, and hear some people laughing in the back of the bus like high school kids do. You take no real notice because people are laughing. And then you hear, "I've got the nigga. I've got the noose. And I got the tree." Others begin to laugh at this point. You realize that you are lost in the shadows. To be lost means to be not able to find the right way or the place intended. Shadows can also be defined as an obscure place, the state of being unknown, inconspicuous, or unimportant. You see, their shadow groups align perfectly with their reflection of disdain, hatred, judgment, and bigotry that justify their behavior of laughing and painting the scene of torturing me, a Black boy, by the hanging of a noose. How does one react under such pressures? Do I retaliate? Do I scream? What does a boy in high school do in the place when even the bus driver's reflection in that large rearview mirror is also smiling and laughing at the taunts, when so sheepishly telling them to redirect with absolutely no direct tone of voice? On that day, did I fight? I did not. Did I scream? No. I didn't say anything. I exited the bus emotionally wounded, embarrassed, and as you might believe, I was also scared. As I entered the transfer bus, though, I felt more emotionally regulated. This is because around me, I could see people that looked like the shadow group that I'm most familiar with. Although I did not know them and they did not know me, there was a felt sense of safety, sameness, soothing, and separateness from the threat of which I had just experienced. So what did I do? Well, naturally, I told my mama what happened. Y'all know what we're gonna do. Talk to mama about everything. So I'll never forget her words though. She said, "Son, you never hate a whole group of people for the ignorance of a few." Knowing that her life then and now reflects Christ, I understand why she responded as she did, because as I said earlier about myself, her life is based on the inerrancy and efficacy of the Bible. For it, the Bible taught her, corrected her, challenged her, and trained her how to love God, become more like Christ, to love people, and to identify herself and others from that lens. Son, never hate a whole group of people for the ignorance of a few. I listened to her words then and still listen to her words now. But every day for the next few weeks, I remained lost in the shadows of those that reflected disdain, hatred, judgment, and bigotry towards me. So what did I do? Unplanned and without intention, I stood up and looked at the back of the bus and shouted as loud as I could, "Who got the nigga? I got the nigga." Now don't ask me where that came from, because as I said, I had no intention of saying anything, but that just came out. After I said that, I sat down thereafter. The derogatory utterances subsided over the period of that year because whatever reaction that they were hoping to gain did not occur. Fast forward to current times, I reflect upon that experience and I'm forever grateful for my mother's wisdom. But could there have been more that she had said? Could there have been more that I have known about the intrinsic experience of safety, sameness, soothing, and separateness that I felt around my shadow group, Black and beautiful people. I didn't have to know them personally to feel safe. I didn't have to know their address to see our similarities. I didn't have to hear a word from them to feel soothed. Nor did I have to get off at the same location, as them to feel connected. You see, I'm thankful for my mother, and I'm thankful for what she told me about the Bible, for its redemption carries over to eternity. And I would have also loved to have known, though, during that time of experience of disdain, hatred, judgment, and bigotry, about the rich history of Black people in America and abroad. I believe that having this knowledge would have acted as a vessel that safely carried me over the turbulent waves of hatred. So my life application manual teaches this, that God made heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by man, nor is served by human hands as if he needed us. That he gives everyone life and breath and everything else, and that from one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the earth, marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands, Acts 17:26. Marcus Garvey, as taught in school as someone who just wanted to move Black people back to Africa, after learning that he was so much more, during his appointed time in history, said these words in a speech. Y'all listen to this. Liberate the minds of men, and ultimately you will liberate the bodies of men. We love the white race, not for social fellowship, but for the common brotherhood who God intended we should live. Later on in that same speech, he says, God made man Lord of his creation, gave him possession and ownership of the world, and you have been so darn lazy that you've allowed the other fellow to run away with the whole world. And now he's bluffing you and telling you that the world belongs to him and that you have no part in it. Marcus Garvey goes on to say with as much passion, I'm trying to be as passionate as him, but I can't reach it, but I'm gonna do my best. I don't have to apologize to anybody for being Black, because God Almighty knew exactly what he was doing when he made me Black. He goes on to say, if Black people knew their glorious past, then they would be more inclined to respect themselves. If Black people knew their glorious past, then they would be so inclined to respect themselves. Why did I feel lost in the shadows on the transfer bus? I felt lost in the shadows because I had no foundation by which to claim to understanding that the comments that I heard was also a reflection of enslaved minds. Y'all hear that? The derogatory utterances that I heard is a reflection of enslaved minds. Minds that were caged in the relativism of their perceptions rather than accepting the absolute truth that I am beautifully Black and bountifully blessed. What makes me beautifully Black and bountifully blessed? Because even when one chooses to diminish my connection with divinity, I declare dominance over my own mind and thinking and encourage myself and remind myself that when I look at the three-way traffic light and gas mask, Garrett H. Morgan, I see Black. When I recount biblical history and the Cushite woman that Moses married in Numbers 12:1, oh, I see Black. When I look at one of the first physicians to perform open heart surgery in the United States, and in 1891 founded Providence Hospital and Training Institution in Chicago, the first Black hospital run exclusively by African Americans, Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, I see Black. When I look at the first person to successfully separate twins co-joined at the head, Dr. Ben Carson, guess what, y'all? Yeah, you said it, I see Black. When I look at the daughter of former slaves who became one of the most important educators, civil and women's rights leaders and government officials of the 20th century, Mary McLeod Bethune, I still see Black. When I look at a pioneer in tooth transplantation and a graduate of Howard University, Dr. Harold Fleming, you got it now. If you were here, I'd have you shout it. What do you see? Thank you. When I look at current and past board members of AAMFT, Dr. Aisha D. Williams, Dr. Debbie Manigat, Brian Doster, Dr. Sharon Ramsey, Dr. Darren Moore, Be More with Darren Moore, that brother, and other leaders in AAMFT that have influenced me, like Dr. Latanya Stevens, Dr. Monique Wills, Amia Mohallan, Dr. Erica Wilkins, Dr. Michael Lee Cook. And let me not forget about myself. Guess what I see, y'all? I see Black. Before I close, I want to honor with a poem Black women. When I wrote this poem, I had you in mind. Before the beginning of life, you were in the mind of Christ. Before the creation of the lands, you were in his plans. You are a Black woman full of virtue and strength. You are a Black woman that knows no length. You are the image of a flower ever blooming, never dying, not tainted by the seasons, forever growing, forever rising, rising in love and growing in grace. You are the image of a Black woman reflecting God's face. You are blessed by your children and praised by your King. You are the image of a Black woman. You are a Black queen, the restless one. I want to thank you for viewing this webinar. I look forward to answering questions that you may have about my experience. Please know that I'm speaking from my personal experiences. The opinions that you're going to get from me are going to be heartfelt and real, and I'm going to answer them as truthfully and honestly as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I had a couple of things that came up while you were presenting, and I wondered, I'll remind you all to please submit those questions in the Q&A, so I'll get to those questions as well. But one thing that immediately kind of stood out for me, and I'm in Oklahoma City, and I didn't know until I moved here that Ralph Ellison is from here. So when you first started talking about being in the shadows, I had a moment of thinking about his book, Invisible Man, and how in that book, he is invisible. People can only see surroundings and they can only see themselves and figments of their imagination. But in turn, the ways in which he's navigating life is invisible. People don't see him. And I thought about, when you talked about the shadows and being in the shadows, I wondered if there was some similarity between also feeling invisible. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you didn't get it from what I said, definitely the only Black person on the bus. And this is 1992. This is not the 50s, right?
Yeah.
This is 92. Pretty modern times, and absolutely felt invisible. Trying to think about how, and I don't know if invisible is all that I felt, right? Invisible is unseen. I felt like I was very seen, but the vision that they saw of me was not me. That was the invisible part. Does that make sense? So they knew nothing of me. The only visible thing that they saw was whatever they may have been raised about or raised, or how they were raised. But they never asked me. They never wanted to see me. And so yes, but looked at in a different way.
Sure. Can you talk about when you started feeling seen? Because if you in 92 at that time you were older, what'd you say, junior or senior?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So at what point did you start to feel seen?
That is a great question. So let me give you some context of where I was raised. I was raised in Charleston, West Virginia, right? West by God, Virginia, for those of you who have never been there. Let's get it right.
What is it?
It's not Western Virginia. It's not the west part of Virginia. It's West Virginia because, you know, we have some confusion out there, right? And so raised right in Charleston, which is the capital. Now, in our shadow groups, you know, we know that we have our own immediate family, and so we can have the subgroup. So, but I never seen in West Virginia because there's only about 15% African American. So when I rode down the highway, you know, I didn't see us in like the nicest cars or in the biggest homes or what have you. And so my view was limited about our influence, right? And as I shared, my mother didn't raise me as your family did you, as we talked, right? With this rich history of knowing by which I came. I moved to Memphis though after I got out of the military. This is after I got out of the military. Now in the military, if you playing spades with you know, I met some real ones in the military, and I realized that you know, if you renege on spades games, I found out that we can get as bold as we can. So you got to come right. So I really started getting connected with, and I'll just say I'll use the word family. I started getting connected with family in the military. But when I moved to Memphis, I believe that's when it was like Renaissance time for me. Out of the military is paying for my school. I saw us everywhere. You feel me? Everywhere. 55% African American, I believe, in Memphis at that time. And so I'm watching news channels. I see us. I see family. I'm going to church. The masses are family. I go in the restaurants, family. You know, I go doctors, lawyers, attorneys, billboards, families everywhere. And all of a sudden something begins to shift. And I'm like, wow, I was very limited. And then I'll tell you something that even most recently happened in the MFT program, right? When we had to go and talk about the genogram. So in my family, on my father's side, alcoholism, absenteeism because of divorce, right? So I thought that on my father's side, the only thing that was there was poverty and abuse and absenteeism. Well, exploring my history by that task that they gave us to go 3 generations back. Oh, come on now. I found out that my great grandfather, Jim Cunningham, you know, the brother had 26 children, right? Wow. 14 by his first wife, and he was a man of God. She died, married Alice, which was from my lineage, right? Where my grandfather came from, had 12 with her. And I realized when you start studying, then I realized since the 80s, early 80s, the Cunninghams been having reunions in the Bahamas. You know, we've been in different cities every year. And when you do not make a choice, an intentional choice to explore, even your own family, sometimes you get a limited view of who you are. And I'm telling you that opened my eyes so much to the fact that we can be blind and we can be invisible to ourselves if we don't do the research.
Yeah, that's powerful. That leads into the other, like I felt like you shifted in your presentation, and that you shifted and kind of talked about self-defining. And of course that made me think about Audre Lorde and her quote about the importance of self-defining so you're not crushed by other people's ideas of who you are. And I wonder, so at what point did you start to self-define?
What a great question. What a great question. After we talked about we were going to do this, didn't we?
You asked me to do that.
I really became, I cannot deny my spiritual awakening. You know, in my bio, there was a in 96, I had a undeniable experience where I mean, I just met God. I'll just say that. From that, I really became who I was. It mattered. Education mattered. Before it didn't really. I was wilding out. Brother was just, I was just doing what a young 18, early 20-year-old would do when he's off in Hawaii by beaches and I said beaches, and other things in the community. But at that defining moment, that's when, if you want to call it an awakening, happened, because these gifts started coming out, like the writing of poetry, accepting myself from a view of not failure, but accepting myself from a view that I'm accepted of the beloved. You know what I'm saying? And so as I align I say it like this, as I align myself with the divine, that's when I became visible to myself. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm bold in what I say. That's why I asked the coordinator behind the scenes, like, is everything gonna be said that I'm gonna say? Make sure it keeps fidelity, because it's important to me that if you don't have to accept me, but I would hope that you would hear me, and that's all one can ask.
Good. So we have a couple of questions. One is added, shine on, Mr. Cunningham, proud of you. This is Dr. Debbie. How does your faith shape your practice, your understanding of race, and self of the therapist?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Debbie. Is that Dr. Debbie M?
Last name's not there. So.
Oh, okay.
I can't see.
So could you repeat the question? Let me process that.
How does your faith shape your practice, your understanding of race, and self of the therapist?
Perfect. So I quoted, I think it was Acts 17:26, where it talks about a one blood, we all are here, right? And I think we talked about this in some of our planning meeting, Dr. LaFleur, how, in America, we see color. In other places, it's not like that. But we differentiate because of color. Well, I believe that from one man, we all are here. We all are here, So whether I had a brother in college, and he said, look around the room, and he said, we're all related. And I looked around and I said, nah. I know for a fact I'm not related to this one or that one. Then the brother educated me. He enlightened me. He said, no, we're all related because of the blood of Christ, right? And he said, and I was like, oh, that kind of brought me up a little bit. But my faith defines me. So in the therapy room, I find it still, I'm at the edge of my seat, Dr. LaFleur, when people come in and flip themselves inside out and shows me parts of themselves that they don't even show to their spouses. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Well, my faith says, come as you are. I don't have to change anything about me when I come, but in the process of me getting to know God or getting to know Christ, in that process, I change, right? But I don't have to like put on this, I dressed in this tie and this because this is the way I have to come. But these people come to me, and I don't define myself as a Christian therapist, because I don't want people who are just Christians to see me. That would bore me, number one. And it would allow me it would limit my growth of really accepting people for where they are. So my race, I have this book. I'm glad she asked this. I said, let me see if this might be relevant. Africa in the Bible, right? And this was written by Edwin Yamachi. I hope I'm saying his name right. Can you say that, Dr. LaFleur?
You did good. I agree.
And so because we've been taught that the Black race is a curse, and people have used biblical scripture falsely to say that we are cursed because, you know, the brother went in and saw Noah naked and I'm cursing you and you're going to be slaves. And that's just false. It's just false teaching, but it's rooted so deeply in our history, so much so that I've asked this question. If people actually, Christians now, thought that Jesus was black and he came back black as he could be. Now, would they reject him? I thought that in our context. I have to ask that question. I wonder if the faith is enough, or is it the color of the man behind the faith? And so I hope I feel like I'm rambling, but I hope I've answered that. But
yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to add, I had maybe learned about the curse of Ham when I was younger, and they talked about that. But I've been in Oklahoma now like almost 7 years. And when I moved here, that was, it's a strong Southern Baptist area. And those lessons are still taught. Like I have students that are still learning that in their churches. And so to hear you question, would they reject Jesus if he was black? I made a face because I was like, that's kind of a given. I mean, the rejection or acceptance is kind of missing. So the other question is, what does it mean to be culturally responsive with a lens of cultural humility?
How would you answer that first?
I think the way it looks for me is a balance of knowledge, education, and practice. So one of the things I also teach, but one of the things that I do and encourage my students to do is be active in different cultural settings. Be the only one in places and recognize what you're feeling and what thoughts come up, and that those experiences, I think, really teach you what you truly kind of believe. And I think I believe those experiences also build that cultural humility, because you start to learn that, people are just people. They're not paying any attention to you. They're living life the way that they are, and that acceptance is twofold. So when you think about person of the therapist work, acceptance begins with understanding yourself and having grace for yourself, which people struggle with.
Right.
And then once you learn to be able to give grace to yourself, that you're also then able to understand what other people are dealing with as well. And I think that at the root of cultural humility for me, that really is grace and understanding of yourself and others. And curiosity. I can't believe I didn't say that word, because I say it all the time, but being curious as opposed to defensive and leaning into what you think or believe, or even what you have been taught. To have someone in front of you that is sharing their experience or open to sharing, be curious about learning rather than digging into what you've known and what
So if you could repeat the question for me one more time, I'm going to respond.
What does it mean to be culturally responsive with a lens of cultural humility?
So everybody, I'm a man of God. I'm unashamedly black. I'm unashamedly a man, and I'm unashamed man of God. So everybody don't feel me on probably all three of those points. But I cannot force that upon anyone, right? I cannot force feed. So I told you I wilded out back in the day. I was not too many people know this, but I was married for a quick minute back in the day. When that undeniable experience happened, I came back to the one that I was with and informed her of the lifestyle that I was living, and it didn't go over well. But I wanted her. I did that in a way because I felt for the first time guilty or conflicted with what I was doing, and so I was trying to force what my understanding was for her to understand, forgetting the fact that she just got a bombshell dropped on her that I have been doing this for X amount of time. I'd say it was a quick minute because I knew her for 6 months, fell in love with that chocolate sister, married for 6 months. My experience happened, told her, and then we, unfortunately it ended. But I realized from that, you cannot force feed anyone your understanding of life. You can tell them about it, nor should you deny your understanding of life, right? So humility, I think, is based upon one, a knowing, not, you said a curiosity, absolutely be curious, but not at the cost of compromising your foundational beliefs. I refuse to compromise my beliefs, but I also refuse to reject others because of theirs. Now, there's some very big differences that I have with people. I experienced this. I'll go back to when you work around Christians a lot, Dr. LaFleur, you already know how you feel. When I went back to school, I realized that, everybody ain't talking Jesus. And people who saying Jesus also dropping F-bombs in the corner too, right? And so I'm like, it's a little awakening for me. But one of my friends there, Caleb Jensen, he's an open homosexual, right? And I just from my social location and from my beliefs, it's just something that I believe the Bible says clearly about certain things. About we just disagree. So had a, and I'll be quick because I know we got time. This brother got offended at something I said when some panelists came in. And by this time, a year went by, and I'm already settled. I already know because I had done the rest, and I've been watching. I've been making sure I'm careful on what to say. But by this time, if you don't know me, you don't know me. So I said, Caleb, listen, man, I can no longer control how you are offended by my beliefs, because I tried that. I tried to say it the right way, or not say it as strongly, or say it a little bit more lightly, but no matter how I said it, the offense was there. So I said, I'm not in control of how you are offended by my words. It's not up to me. I said, but this is what I'll tell you. I said, because we went out to eat, I was a hog wild guy eating them big potato studs, with meat, double meat. I just, can give you a little bit. But I told him, I said, look, if we were at a restaurant and somebody came to you and called you outside of your name, said very derogatory terms, and we can imagine what those might be because of his lifestyle. I said, they're gonna have to go through me. I said, not because I agree with you, because I'm not gonna agree with you, but because I love you, and I've learned to be a friend of you regardless of what we disagree on. And he knew that to be true, but I had to stop trying to control a person's offense because of my standard of belief. I refuse to apologize for that. So, but I remain humble as well.
Okay, one more question. And there's still time, so if people have other questions, so there's a couple here. So this is something that it is Dr. Debbie M. that you said. What do you believe or wish you needed in supervision to build your identity as a therapist? She's asking both of us.
An opposite and opposing voice, and a fearless supervisor. So I think if you just have someone that agrees with you all the time, or does not ask you in one way or the other, have you looked at it this way, or you're wrong, just telling you, then I think that we should look for a supervisor who, I believe they do have to align with us somehow, because we have to agree to that, but at the same time, one who is absolutely knowledgeable, competent, in what it means to be an MFT, and also somebody that just can get off the paper and just maybe tell their experience, and just sit back and say, look, let me just tell you what I feel about it right now. This is what I feel about it, but this is how you're gonna have to proceed. right? So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always wished that I had a supervisor of color. And definitely I would have appreciated a Black supervisor for a couple of different reasons. One being, and you mentioned this earlier at some point, and I thought representation matters. When you moved to Memphis and you were seeing Black people everywhere doing everything.
Renaissance, I call it my renaissance.
Yeah, I always say representation matters. And so I think about how powerful that would have been for me early in my career, to know and see, have access to Black therapists would have been really helpful as I tried to navigate these different spaces. I think the other thing is that it's not a secret that our models are not multicultural, and that a lot of the aspects of those models have to be modified to be able to really apply to some of the experiences that marginalized groups have. And I wish I would have had a supervisor who would have challenged more, to help me understand as a young therapist that my job isn't to learn, like to understand this and keep working to make it make sense, but that it's okay to challenge that and to look at things realistically, I think. And so that isn't that what we do for our clients? I mean, we're really doing some of that work with our clients as well. And I wish I would have had more of that. And I often wonder how that would have changed the early experiences in my career.
Can I share something too? I surrounded myself from the beginning of when I met you at that conference. That's where I met some other wonderful MFTs that I named when I was talking earlier. And they were saying, Amia specifically, she's like, "You a unicorn." I was like, "What?" You're a Black male therapist, so you're a unicorn. I did not know what that meant. I'm learning what that means, right? But one of the things that they shared with me is the cultural experience, even with regards to finances, right? Even with regards to that. But they've also talked to me. I went to them with consults, during consultation, and talked to them like, "Listen, this is what's going on." And I'm telling you, the way I received the direction was welcome. Like, just tell them to get over it, but I know what that means in context. You don't just tell them to get over it, but the way that they shared how I should go about telling them, it was, that meta communication already knew what that meant in context from our culture. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think so I've been in the field almost 20 years now. And so early 2000s look a lot different than what people have now. So when I think about being at AAMFT and just seeing some random Black therapists kind of around, and other therapists of color, being from the Midwest, that was not the access that I had where I was. And so I think now when I'm at AAMFT, and we be in there deep, so it's a little bit different, and I've been in some sessions where people have really been challenging and passionate about kind of making changes, not just talking about it, but what are we going to do? And so this probably our last question kind of touches on that as well. And you've been in leadership with AAMFT, so this is a great question for you. But how can AAMFT advance the profession integrating racial equity?
Yeah, so first of all, let's not be scared to apply. One of the things I realize is that nominations are open to everyone, right? But what I've also learned is the time that people have is limited. But sometimes we got to sacrifice to make ourselves seen more. So Dr. Ramsey, right? Sharon was very encouraging to me. what some of the things that she said, we need to be in this space. I don't know if that's exactly what she said, but she said, we need to be in this space. I think it's wide open. I'm going to be honest. Now, I haven't been in the field. I would just say I'm still an infant, you know, so I'm still sponging and learning, but I've not only, when I was on the board, I'll say this, that I felt welcome in both me as a Black man, and also, like I said, most of the people on the board, we probably had very different foundational beliefs. But one of the things that our ex-CEO did, he read a letter from a member that matched more my belief. It didn't match some of the other board members' beliefs, but what he said is like, but they're members. He said, I may not agree with it either, but they're members, and that has to be taken into consideration, because whenever you're under the umbrella of AMFT, your voice has to be recognized. You no longer can, because you're a member, you have rights. That's what I would say. Mm-hmm. But if you went through like the minority fellowship program, like many of the people that I know have, you are a candidate. Matter of fact, you've already kind of laid the path for yourself. So I think it's wide open. I think the more we tell people, so if I wouldn't have been on the board, there would have been, I wouldn't have known anything about how deep AMFT is involved in the protection of our practice, right? Mm-hmm. But because I was initiated into the student pre-allied health professional, then the bylaws changed and the brother had another year on the board. I was introduced to knowing I didn't know how important it was. So I think at the grassroots level, and I think there's people that are currently sitting on the board that believes this too, that at the grassroots level, from the professor, you know, from your role to the student, right there is where I would begin. So, and that's been talked about. I will say this. I can't disclose all that's been talked about, because as one is, you just don't do that if I want to stay in good standing, right? But that communication is happening at the top level. The DEI focus is real. That is a big focus at the board level, and the more voices that can raise up to that, I think the more will be more represented. Mm-hmm. I will say the Dr. Manigat is I did ask her to be a part of the board. You know, Dr. Debbie, and I'm proud of it. I'm not even gonna lie. I asked her. Now I'm just one person, you know, but other people saw her gifts, her talents, the work that she's doing. And I think that's important, is that when we see people doing work, honor them. Don't be selfish. Don't feel like it should have been me. There's too much of that already. Elevate people.
Yeah, I appreciate you being able to kind of talk about getting active. I'm the chair of Margins to Center, which we really want to focus on supporting clinicians of color around networking. That's something that has been said multiple times since I've been in AAMFT, about needing to be able to make connections, because we're few and we're spread out. But I also recognize everybody's plate is pretty full. Right. And so finding workers, people that are willing to kind of do some of those things and lead is a little bit harder, which I completely understand. But our challenge is, and I think MFTs are really best suited with our systemic lens to really be not just in session helping clients to change their families, relationships, their community, and the world, but also for ourselves. And so if we're giving everything to work and we don't have anything to actually be doing to help change systems, you know, we're spinning wheels, it feels like sometimes. It's Black History Month. So we've been talking about this stuff for centuries. And now, you know, people are tired. We need real change.
And I feel like it's very easy to complain. And right, and but there's been people that I've experienced a lot of things on the board. It's not no need to say over live air. But yeah, there needs to be some changes. There needs to be some recognition. There needs to be bigger spaces for, like even at conferences, like things like that for these types of conversations. I did experience that at the 2019 conference. Dr. Erica Wilkins, boy, and her colleagues that did that breakout, that workshop. I mean, we're in the house.
Oh yeah,
doing some wonderful things. So
for sure. Well, thank you, Robert, for all of your insightful and heartfelt information and sharing it from a really genuine place. I appreciate our conversation today. And I'd like to thank everyone else for joining us as well this afternoon to explore these very important topics. As a reminder, the session code for part 1 of the webinar with Robert is 48399. Please use this code to access the evaluation form. And as a reminder, we will be having a follow-up panel discussion on February 23rd with Barbara Dunn, Robert, and myself to discuss, are you lost in the shadows? If you haven't registered yet, please visit the website to do so. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.